And here we go. So welcome to Faith and Calm. This is number 81. And today we're going to reveal the inner you. I think there's a lot of concealment in this week's parsha. And we sometimes get lost also in our clothes and our stuff. But let me explain what I'm talking about here. So everybody knows the story from this week's parsha. And that is that Yitzhak wants to bless his sons, wants to bless his first son, Esav, and he tells him to go out to hunt and to get some food and bring it back, and he will give him a nice blessing. And hello, Molly. Hello, Devorah. Good. We're just beginning. And everybody knows the story. And then Esav goes out hunting. He has trouble finding anything. Meanwhile, Esau's mother, Yaakov's mother, Rivka, says to Yaakov, he says, I want you to go in. I want you to get your brother's blessing. He's getting the first one, get that blessing. And Yaakov tells him, I can't go in. He'll find out that I'm not Esav. So she says, I got a good plan. The curse will be on you. Just put on his clothes and you wear these goat skins and you'll feel furry and your father won't know the difference. And if he ever figures it out, then the curse is on me, which is really a lot of hard things to understand. And Yaakov goes in and gets Esau's blessing. And this is doing it to Torah. What is it doing there? I mean, it's basically going to give everybody the excuse, you Jews, you're just a bunch of swindlers. You steal from your brother, you steal from the Arabs, you steal everything. You're not trustworthy. And even Torah tells you about that. And what is Rivka doing? I mean, it is her husband after all. And, if she really wanted to, why didn't she just go into Yitzhak and say, Yitzhak, the future of the Jewish people, you might love Esav, but he's not the future of the Jewish people. He runs around, he hunts, he steals women, he kills people and so forth. He's not going to be a good representative for the future of the Abrahamic line. Take Yaakov. You're out to lunch. You really don't know. And Jewish women never were afraid of telling their husbands, what the right thing was to do. So what is she doing and what he's accomplishing by this act of deception and so forth? How is this acceptable? And why is Yaakov saying, okay, you'll take the curse. I won't take it. Good, I'll go in. That doesn't sound like Yaakov either. He's a very Ishtam. He loves his mother. He's not going to let her take all the blame. So why does he think this is a good idea? Why does he agree to this entire deception? So there's an answer from the first Ger Rebbe, the Chiddushei Harim, who lived, I guess, in the 1800s, 1700, in Poland. And he writes a very interesting thing. And he says, basically, that Rivka was a prophetess, and she saw that in the future there's going to be Jews who inwardly are very Jewish, but outwardly pretend to be part of the dominant culture, Esav's culture, which is where we live in the modern world, in the modern secular Western world. They'll have the clothes, they'll dress, they'll speak, they'll act, they'll behave like non-Jews outwardly, but inwardly they'll be Jews. And you know what? I want those Jews to get also the blessing. I want those Jews to also realize their who they are inside. I want those Jews to feel Jewish too. So if Yaakov went in and Yitzhak blessed Yaakov, he would be basically saying, I'm blessing Jews who look and feel and act and do like the complete tzaddikim and who are very holy. Those people don't need the special blessing. What they want is the Jews that are struggling with their Jewishness, and then the inside doesn't feel so Jewish. The inside feels very Jewish, but the outside, they're a Jew in my heart. But on the outside, they're really not acting very Jewish. And that's what she wanted to do. She wanted those Jews to have a blessing too. They tell a story about I have to tell stories. I see that. It's a good thing to do here. It's a story about an atheist. And this atheist was walking in the forest, and he was admiring the wonders of nature and how great it is and how beautiful it is. And then he hears a sound behind him, and he looks and he sees there's a 7-foot grizzly bear behind him. And he goes, oh, and he starts running. and he's running as fast as he can, but the grizzly bear can run pretty fast too. And he's catching up, and he looks again, and he's catching up, and then he trips and he falls down, and he looks up and he sees the bear is right over him, and he goes, "Oh my God!" And then all of a sudden, everything stops. The forest stops. There's no sounds anymore. The bear stops in his tracks. Everything goes dim, and a big light comes from heaven, comes down, and it shines on him. And a voice comes out and says, "You? You're now calling me? What's you're not only are you an atheist, but you're trying to convince everybody else to be an atheist. And now you decide you want to call me, you're interested in me?" And the atheist goes, "You know what? You are right. It would be very, very hypocritical for me to just call for you when I need you. So you know what? Don't do anything special for me. All I ask is one thing. Make the bear a believer." And the voice goes, "Okay, I will." And all of a sudden the light disappears. Birds start chirping again. Time continues to move again. And the bear all of a sudden stops. He closes his eyes, he puts his hands over his eye, and he starts saying, "Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Borei whatever, Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz." He was going to have a bread with this guy too. What's the point of the story? There are Jews that wear the bear suit. They look completely like an animal. They don't have anything, but inside they're big believers and so forth. And this is the story of, that this is what Rivka wanted to have the blessing, wanted to have the blessing to go even for these kind of people. And that's actually, it's an interesting thing. It's even said in the Gemara, in the Parsha, and explained in the Gemara. Said he put on clothes of goatskin clothes. And everybody has problems with this, because even Rashi says, there's nothing that smells worse than a goat. And goatskin even smells even worse. And yet Yitzhak, when he comes in, he says about Esav, he said, what he thinks is Esav is actually Yaakov. He says, "I smell the smell of my son, and it's like the smell of a field that God has been blessed." In other words, it smells like Gan Eden. It smells like the Garden of Eden just walked in here. This is not Garden of Eden. What is the smell that he's so taken away, and why is his clothes so much? So Beged is an interesting thing. Clothes actually have two functions. One is to keep us warm, but it also is to create an impression. You wear nice clothes and you pretend. Some people look like they're very smart and intelligent and well-mannered. And, that's just the clothes, but it's not the inner person. So both clothes are related to the word Beged, which means treacherous, traitors, and so forth. What does it mean that they're traitors? So there's a story in the Gemara, an odd story, but a very interesting story. It says in the time when the Romans came to destroy the temple and they defeated the Jews, they got a Jew whose name was Yosef Menisa. And they told this Jew was a very non-religious Jew. They said, "You know what? We don't want to risk the fact of going into the temple to be the first ones to go in. We could be dangerous for us. And we'd rather you go in. If anything bad happens, it's good to happen to you. And you just bring out something for us, and then you can bring out something, and you can keep it, and so forth, and then we'll go in." So this guy goes in, and he decides, it comes out, and they see he's carrying the menorah, the big 7-branched menorah from the temple. And they go, "That's not what we thought. You're not allowed to take something like that. A normal person, a king has that thing, but that's not for just a normal run-of-the-mill person. Go back in, get something else for yourself, and leave that one for us." And he tells them, he says, "I won't do it." And they say, "Why not? We'll give you more. You don't only get something else. We'll give you the taxes for the whole country of Judea for 3 years if you give us that." And he still refuses. And he says, "It's bad enough that I angered my God once by going into the temple and stealing from it. I'm not going in again." They get very mad with him. They put him on a blacksmith's table, and they beat him, and they pierce him until he's dead. And that is the story in the Medrash. And the commentators explain, and they say, what was the difference between the first time where he really didn't care and he went right in and he stole, and the second time? And the answer is because he came into a very holy place and it actually affected him. Because the inner part of a Jew, no matter what he's at, that when you really come into the touch with the truth of truth and reality, you can't hide yourself from that anymore. So all the clothes, all the falseness fell away from him. And immediately he became sensitive to godliness. And so then he says, I can't do this. I can't do that to my God. All of a sudden he became a believer again, like the guy with the guy with the bear, who all of a sudden believes that God is there and he can change the bear into a believer. He's still a believer. It doesn't matter, So inside there's always there's a Jew. That's when they would come into a very holy place. And if you think this is only a story for old times in history, there's a story about a German Jew who was born in the 1800s, 1886. His name was Franz Rosenzweig. Now, you probably don't know him. I'd never heard of him before either. But anyway, he was a famous German philosopher in the early 1900s. And he passed away at a young age at 1929. And like many Jews in Germany, he was very, very assimilated and didn't know much about Judaism. And then one time in 1913, he decided, it's enough of this Judaism. I need to be accepted by my colleagues at the university as a professor. And therefore, I'm going to convert. But I'll do one last time, I'll do something Jewish. It happened to be right before Yom Kippur. So he decided that for Yom Kippur, he would go to a synagogue and he would pray. And right afterwards, he had an appointment to be baptized and become a Christian. Okay. Now, he wrote his friends and he told them that's what he's doing. And he went to a synagogue in Berlin in 1913 on Yom Kippur. He didn't go into the big fancy Reform synagogues, though. For some reason, he picked a very small Hasidic steeple, and he spent, he spent his whole the Yom Kippur in there. And when he finished, he wrote his sponsor, and he says, I've decided I'm not converting. And he wrote a book about it, and he became a fairly devoted Jew, because he saw something in Yom Kippur, in the Holy of Holy of Yom Kippur, of that experience, and it touched him. It touched him because the blessing of Rivka was for those Jews. She said, I don't want to lose those Jews. And many, many Jews came from that. Many of the best Jews actually came from Edom. Rabbi Akiva came from Edom. Rabbi Meir came from Edom. It was all because that, Yitzchak and Rivka did not give up on those particular Jews. The ones that look outwardly, are outwardly seem to be lost. And even the Edomites, even the Asaph, he had sparks of holiness in him. And it came out in later generations. Most converts that you find today, even, who are righteous converts, come from, not from the Ishmaelites, from the Arabic-speaking countries, but come from the Western countries. So this was what they saw. They saw that there was a certain holiness there, and that was trapped in there, and it may not come out right away, but it was going to come out. And now certainly every single Jew, everyone that has something on the outside he's not connected, don't believe it. They're very, very, very holy. And that, I'm not going to switch over to my wife because she is suffering from laryngitis and a few other things. So she asked me to take her slot for tonight. Hi, Shalom Jonas.
May I ask you a couple of questions about this?
Yeah.
Okay, one is, it seems
to hear the second part. You will ask lots of questions on the second part. Go ahead.
It seemed that Esau, when he found out that the blessing was stolen from him, or given, that he was genuinely hurt and devastated by it.
Yes.
He, and that shows something in him that is very, to me, very holy and deep,
Yeah.
and I wonder if at that point, had he been given a blessing, or something, that maybe he would have been like the man who went into the synagogue before he was going to convert and then didn't convert. Maybe that his trajectory would have been different. I mean, he never seemed totally evil to me. He's always been made out to be evil, like he became that way afterwards. and like he was always doing, but he didn't seem that way when he was still part of the family. He seemed like he had something in him that needed to be unlocked in a way. Am I wrong about that, or?
No. I just didn't want to repeat last year's talk. I talked a lot last year. Go look at I think it's 48 or something like that.
About
1
this?
year ago, very much about Esav and about how the holiness of Esav and the tragedy of Esav and the passion of Esav. I mean, you just hear this kid who's crying to his father, say, "Father, Father, you didn't save, at least for me, one blessing." And he lifts up his voice and he cries, and you feel the passion of for this compassion for this child, who just seems like he never got a break, and his brother always came in and, was the goody and got everything from him. So yeah, I mean, the Esav is but I don't want to do what I did last year right now. We can go over that again. It's enough. There's many different facets to the story. It's a very, very rich story. But there's something very, very potentially very holy, but there's also something very tragic about Esav, and that is on the practical, revealed level. He was quite a problem child. But
the other question I had is Edom his kingdom or something? Who were the Edomites?
Okay, so that's the second part. You're right. We're leading into my second. Okay, so this is certainly a wild conversation. This talk comes through Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, but he found it was in a sefer. It was written by a rabbi from Italy who lived in the late 1700s, early 1800s. His name was Rabbi Moshe David Vola. He comes from the city of Padua in Italy. He was a contemporary of the Baal Shem Tov, and I guess the even overlap with the Alter Rebbe. And he was also the teacher of a more famous. Well, people know more about him. He was the teacher of Rabbi Chaim Luzzatto, who wrote the Mesilas Yesharim. The what is it in English? The want to help me? The guide, the path of the righteous, or something.
The path of the just.
Path of the just. Path of the just. And this rabbi was both a doctor, but also a very famous Makubal, Kabbalist. And his student, the Ramchal, was also a bit of a Kabbalistic spiritual kind of guy. We're looking for more of a more inclusive full Judaism. And one of the things that this Ramdam of Padua wrote was a book called Or HaOlam, which is a commentary on the first book of the Torah, the Bereshis. And also he wrote many books that are in manuscript forms that are, they call it vichuchim, debates or disputations of Christianity. So he wrote this very interesting thing about this blessing that was given to Esav. So after Yaakov left, remember, Esav walked in, and Yitzhak was trembling. He was worried that he did the wrong thing. And Esav screams and says, "Don't you have some blessing?" And one of the blessings that Yitzhak gives to Esav is, he says, you should have the fruit of the field, the fat of the land, but you're going to have to, you're going to have to, mostly it's translated as, you're going to have to serve your brother, because I made him your master, and everything that the master requires, the servant has to serve. So the Ramad of Vola, he says an interesting thing. He says, Tavo doesn't only mean serve, it means also serve like worship. Avoda, the prayers, the Shema Esra is also called the Avoda, you serve. So he's saying that this is actually the source of the fact that, says that you will actually worship your brother. Where do we see this? So we know about Esav that he is the forefather of Edom, and Edom is considered to be the country not only of Italy, but of all of the Western Europe. So the Rome is the country of Edom. So he says, from this we see the strange thing that was going to happen. At a certain point in time in history, Yitzhak foresaw that the descendants of Esav, Edom, are going to get tired of worshiping pagan gods and idols, which is what most of the world worshiped for most of its history, 3,000 years. And they're going to look for something more monotheistic, but they're going to make the decision that they're going to have to worship of something physical, human in the world. So they're going to choose someone. Who are they going to choose? A Jew. They're going to choose a Jew, and they're going to worship him, and that's how they're going to accept on themselves monotheism. Now, we're not talking about something we're talking about something pretty strange here. I mean, this is the source of the whole idea that, you know, of the Son and the Father, and that there's a Son and you should worship him and so forth. And it's and for some reason they chose a Jew. They chose to worship a Jew. And he says this is the source of the idea of worshiping a certain Jew. Rabbi Weiwei's brother, Simon Jacobson, was once he was invited to a talk by the Catholic Church, and there were the deacons there, and the bishops were there, and the priests were there, and so forth. And they were talking about various world events and ideas, and they were getting along very nicely, and everything was very homey, and they even sang some songs together and so forth. But at one point, one of the priests asked them, he says, listen, you know, this is all very nice, but you know, we have a big problem, an argument between us. He says, who's going to be the Messiah? Who's going to be Mashiach? So Rabbi Simon Jacobson had an idea playing through his head. So he said, well, I know there's just one thing that we'll agree on. No matter what, whether it's this Jew or that Jew, it's going to be a Jew, right? So it's going to be, and they all laughed and they thought that was very funny. So, but it's a very odd thing, that they would why would they pick a Jew, to be there? They don't paint him that way, that's for sure. They always try and make sure he doesn't look, and the mother certainly shouldn't look very Jewish. But, fact was that he was a rabbi, and his mother was Jewish, and that was the story. So the Rambam says, I'm not just telling you little fables and stories. I'm actually telling you a very interesting indication about the time before Mashiach and about the role of the Jew and what his real role is and what a Jew is, no matter how he's covered over and so forth. It says in the Gemara that in the time of Mashiach, the Hasidim, the holy ones, the tzaddikim will be called Kodesh, 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 which is usually only applied to Hashem. They'll be called very holy. And then when he gives a source, and he says, and by the way, it says in Pirkei Avos, V'yamei kulam tzaddikim, your people are all holy. And this is a source that Jews actually, there's a certain level of holiness, especially in certain people. As is Moses. Moses, they said, when he was after the singing of the golden calf, he separated, and any Jew who wanted to search for Hashem had to go to Moses. And it says, you want to see Hashem, you go to Moses. What do you mean you go to Moses to find Hashem? And the same story was actually with Rivka when she was pregnant. She said she went also to find out what was going on with these twins inside of her. She didn't know what was happening. She went to search for Hashem, and she found Shem, and she found him. So what does it mean that you find people that are godly? So he says, actually, excuse me?
Not everybody knows who Shem is, a prophet.
Oh, prophet. Yes, he was the son of Noah. So he was the teacher of Abraham and Yitzhak and Yaakov about monotheism. So he continued the chain from Adam Harishon to Noah to Shem to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. They went to his yeshiva. Okay, thank you for that bridge. So that was the bridge. So he says, and this is the most striking thing he says, and that actually is the nature of every single Jew. That there is a level inside of us which we are not limited by when we're not limited by our ego, and we're not thinking about ourselves, and we're not concerned about, creating an impression about ourselves, and the less focus we have on ourselves, the more we become selfless, and we can become actually a channel for something greater than us, to be channeled for God. And God is never depressed, and he's never sad, and he's never says I'm such a loser, and he never gets so overwhelmed by the situations. And in fact, that's really when we are in the right place and we're in tune with ourselves, we should also realize that we have the power to overcome whatever situation that we're in, because we are a piece of godliness. And this is what disturbed Asaph so much, because he sort of realized, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to worship a Jew. Why not a Jew as a Jew? And this can be easily distorted and misunderstood. It doesn't mean any sort of power play and that we're greater than anybody else. And that's because that's all egotism, and that any sort of racism or any other kind of thing like that. But ultimately, the Jew should be like a mirror of what is above him, which means that there's nobody there at all. He is just a glass that you look through to find godliness. And when we actually connect with that space in ourselves, and I'm certainly not applying that to me, I don't know of anybody else, but there should be at a certain level of our existence and our reality is that we have that capacity to be a reflection of godliness in this world. And that's what the Rabbi Moshe David of Padua, the Vola Vadav, is saying is the lesson from here is that Asaph will realize that he will come to understand, and he already did. It's one of the reasons he got so angry was because he said, I'm going to worship, he heard the truth in that, and he didn't like it. But the truth is that, his descendants say, wow, we get connected to God, but we want to get connected to God, but we have to do it through a physical, material way, because that's what we relate to. So we need to have some sort of a representative, a shliach of it. And that is the second part of the story, is that, there's a certain holiness in a Jew, a holiness that no matter what, however it's covered over, how many garments it's hidden under, how many layers of clothing it's underneath, there's a holiness in the Jew. And you should never give up on any Jew, because he's got that ability to shine out and to become something special. And that's, of course, we should look at ourselves that way too. And that's certainly a practical advice, is that, when you feel that you're so, part of the reason we get so depressed or upset about what's going on with us ourselves and so forth is we're thinking a little bit too much of ourselves. And the less we think about that, and the more we think about what we can accomplish, the better off, the more happier we are, because we are actually can tap in to this level of energy and spirituality and holiness that we really are supposed to be conveying it to the rest of the world, and giving them the ability to relate, to become the best things that they should be able to become too. So every time I try, I see people upset and negative and spreading bad words about other people. I try and get them to also, realize, it's there's a higher way to look at this thing. I'm here to help you and give you solutions and discover in yourself the ability that you have, the ability to influence, you have the ability to change and transform situations. And when you look at it that way, it's just a much more constructive way to solve the problems of this world. So that's roughly my prepared thing. I could talk, if you were interested, about we have Shlomo Judas has something to say.
I just want to say thank you.
Okay. That was a different voice. What was that voice?
The chipmunks are here.
Oh, God.
Yes, Shimon, I find sometimes when I talk to people that they just want to be heard. They don't want to go to a higher level of dealing with the problem, or they don't want to hear what you think about it, or might, have another perspective on it. And so what do you do in that instance?
Oh, I think you're doing the right thing. I think you have a good sense, and so forth. I think that nobody really listens well until they first can feel that they're heard. You know, and they made well, no matter how crazy or strange or how they frame the world or think about how it works and so forth. And sometimes you wonder, you know, he's like, you know, boy, I'm glad I don't look at things in the life the way you do, you know, and so forth. But you got to hear them out. You got to get into their shoes, and you got to feel and empathize with how they look at things, because otherwise, you know, it's in the end, they have to internalize the message on their terms and in their unique way. So yeah, if you don't feel
Well, can
heard,
they
you
get
feel
to that on
silenced
their
and so
own?
forth, I think they can. I think they can.
I mean,
And you
they
can do
don't
that
get-
by little, you know, guided questions, you know, saying, you know, like, you know, how's this been working for you so far? Okay. You know, if they're really stuck in something, you know, that they probably have somewhere deep inside, there's a voice in there that's saying, you know, I've been stuck in this for 10, 5, 10, 15, 20 years and so forth, and I'm not getting anywhere. And some voice in them is saying, you know, you really need to move on, you know, into something else. You need to grow. And I think that's a warm feel, that's a positive message about them. I believe in you. I really believe that you can grow. I really believe that you can figure this out. I really believe that there are solutions for you. And I really believe that, you know, that it might take a little bit of leap. It may take a little bit of growth. It may take some stretching, but, you know, it is possible. And let's start looking and seeing, you know, what is the possible roadmap and path to get there. I'm going to turn off the recording now, but because that was my main part of the talk. But if you want to continue to talk, we can do that. All right.